so that we do record so that we can post on the website so that people who were not able to be here today will still have access. So thank you for that reminder.
Linda, will the chat be recorded?
I don't believe it is, unfortunately,
Well,
but I just am not technologically savvy enough to know.
actually, I'm checking to make sure it's not.
Okay. So Majors John and Judy Bennett were appointed as corps officers, which means pastors, to the Salvation Army Monterey Peninsula Corps on July of this year. They served for 7 years in the Hawaiian and Pacific Islands Division, 4 years in the Marshall Islands, which we were just talking about. And before they were appointed to the Pacific Islands, they served in Colorado for 17 years as pastors. They have been married 37 years. They have 3 adult children. Ruth is indefinitely living with them right now, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, as she telecommutes to Washington, D.C. And their sons, Philip and Mark, who live in Denver. So they're going to give us so welcome. And they're going to just tell us a little bit about the Salvation Army itself. Kind of some history and then what they're doing locally. Thank you.
Well, it's so nice to meet all of you. And Judy asked me specifically not to just say, I'll turn it over to my wife and then she'll come back a little later. So I've been instructed that I have to begin anyway. So not everybody knows what the Salvation Army is. Although Michelle, I think you've got some history there, and Lee, you ring bells, and maybe some other folks have done that.
For a minute.
So let me give you just a little bit of history of the Salvation Army. Kind of tells you kind of where we were and kind of some of the transitions that we made. Salvation Army was actually begun by a couple, William and Catherine Booth, in London in 1865. The Booths were Methodist preachers, revivalists, and William specifically. Catherine was, she was a bit sickly throughout her life, but she was kind of like the theologian of the two, and William was really the activist. And so in 1865, they went and preached in the East End of London, which was the slum at the time. There was a lot of, you'll read this like in Dickens and other authors of the time, you know, people helping people out and doing activities of charity work. And they were revivalists along with the charity work. And so they began to preach at the Blind Beggar's Tavern there. And I don't remember if it was the first time they went out or after a few times. People started throwing things, and they'll use the word brickbats, but there's bricks. They'd throw bricks at the guys, bricks and dead cats. And so after all of this, William came back home to Catherine after, receiving some dead cats and some bricks. And he said, Catherine, I found Kate, I found my destiny. So that ought to tell you a little bit about the Salvation Army right there. Just some basic work. I mean, again, it was revivalist work in the late 19th century. But William always had a sense of social consciousness of what was going on. And one day he learned that there was men sleeping underneath a bridge, and they didn't have anything going on. And so he turned to his son Bramwell, and he says, Bramwell, how long have you known about this? And he says, well, for quite a long time, sir. And he says, well, do something. And so these are phrases that the Salvation Army know. Do something, okay? And then he says, but no coddling. So do it, but it has to be basically a hand up and not just keeping people where they're at. And William came up with a thing called the cab horse charter. He said that a normal horse gets a place to sleep every night, they have food to eat, and they have productive work to do. And so he says every human being should have the same. They should have a place to sleep, they should have work to do, and they should have enough food to eat. And so those kind of became the rallying cries for the Salvation Army. And then the last thing I usually talk when I'm talking about, second to last thing that I talk about William Booth is that one day, as the movement grew, because they never really considered themselves a church in the traditional sense, they were a street mission. And in fact, its first name before it was called the Salvation Army was the Christian Mission. And they saw themselves as missioners that would go out. And as they began to go out into other countries, one day it was late 19th century, just beginning of the 20th century, and he wanted to communicate to all of his people out there. And so he sent a telegram with one word, which was others. So these are the kind of things. And then the final image of William Booth is at his death in the early 1900s. There was a woman who had been a prostitute most of her life and then had found redemption through the Salvation Army. And she sat next to the Queen Mother, and that's the way it worked, And she turned to the Queen Mother and said about William Booth, he cared for the likes of us. So these are kind of like the foundational thoughts, the things that go along with it. There's lots of, we have our own, peculiar theology. And one of the things I tell people is, if you get to know the Salvation Army, it's a funky organization. I mean, it doesn't work in the normal way that most churches work. It doesn't work in the way that most, charities work. It has this kind of crossbred thing that goes on, and we have our own little ways of doing things. We wear uniforms instead of normal clothes, and we have our own little language that we speak among ourselves. But those basic thoughts, do something, no coddling, everybody deserves the right to work, the right to receive food, to eat and to do productive labor, thinking of others first, and we care for whoever comes in. So we have a phrase, it's not exclusive to the Salvation Army. We serve the last, the least, and the lost. And that's kind of where our foundation is. Somewhere in the late 1800s, Salvation Army came to the United States and began its work. And of course, we were crazy guys out there. We had a guy named Joe the Turk who would made it his mission to get arrested for Jesus on a regular basis. So he would preach in places he wasn't supposed to preach. He'd preach until somebody arrested him. And so he had an umbrella, 498 days in jail. That was the kind of things, just to get attention and stuff like that. And eventually in the late 1800s, Salvation Army moved to, I believe, Pacific Grove first. The old building is there, into the Monterey Bay area, and to work specifically among the Chinese and the people that were kind of workers as opposed to those that were wealthy. So that's kind of how we ended up in this area, and we've been here for, I can't remember the amount of years, but quite a while now, at least over a century at this point. So that's kind of the history, and then so we'd like to kind of go on into what we're doing currently now. So the Salvation Army obviously does church work. So on any given Sunday and throughout the week, we'll have services. Most people know about our work with alcohol rehab and drug rehab. And so currently there is no facility like that in the Monterey County or Monterey Peninsula. The closest one would be San Jose. And so when you see our thrift stores, the thrift stores are actually what fund the work of our rehab ministries. And so when you give clothes to the Salvation Army and we sell it, I know some people have said, why are you selling that? It's not to give it away, it's to actually fund the work of drug and alcohol rehab ministry that we do. And then of course, most people know about our work with people that are in poverty, people that are homeless, and those kind of things. So I'll just briefly go over some of our ministries currently. So I know somebody mentioned that they knew about our preschool, which was the Child Development Center that has been here for 30 some odd years. Due to COVID, we had to close it, and it is still kind of in hibernation at this point. And so, we were told, again, I came from the Hawaiian Pacific Islands recently, so I didn't know the story, but we were told by a supporter that it was one of the best preschools that was around. And those kids ages 2.5 to 5 years old, when they arrived to kindergarten and first grade, they were ready to learn, which was very, very good. That sounds like the kind of things we do. We also have a transitional housing program that's with two components. There is a small emergency shelter for families, 4 units, 90-day maximum. And so families come and they're trying to get themselves to a place where they can land, find a place to launch to. Recently, out of those 4 recently, we had a person who went directly into permanent housing and is self-supporting at this point. Which is a great outcome. And then we have those 4 units, and then we have another 15 units for transitional housing. And we just had 3 people leave into permanent housing from our transitional housing. That program is up to 2 years, but that all depends upon the client and what they're actually looking for. So the funding streams are different. We can't blend the two. So a 4-unit emergency shelter, and then a 15-unit transitional housing shelter. And then along with that, and right now I'm just speaking Monterey Peninsula, along with that, there is the Good Samaritan Center that's in Sand City. And we serve right now about 200 households per month. The big thing that's happened is that there was about 1.27 million that was given to the county to distribute for rental assistance, and we have been working on that. We've just spent down our portion of that in the last week or two, getting people into permanent housing as or helping them with the rent. So sometimes people they're just on the verge of getting evicted. Now, with the current situation, people won't get evicted, but they're getting behind in their rent, and they're going to have to pay that, and landlords are behind. And so Department of Social Services is helping them through helping agencies to make sure that those bills can be paid as much as possible. And so we've been helping with that. And then also we do, for homeless folks, we have showers and laundry facilities that happen Monday through Friday. And of course, feeding at the same time that goes on. But instead of a normal shelter, a homeless shelter, this is day services. So we open up at about 8:30. We shut down at 5. There's an hour off for lunch, and people come and get those services, and then along with casework and case management, working people through some of their issues. And in fact, so what we can do then is for those people that are in need and maybe have lost housing or are on the verge, we can help them to find housing through some of the programs and through the funds we have. And sometimes we bring them into emergency shelter or into transitional housing. And then the point is to place them into a permanent housing at the end. That's kind of what we're shooting for. Again, we can't do all of that by ourselves. We rely on many other agencies to be able to work with us in those things. And that's a little bit about the kind of the social work. The one thing I do want to mention, because Lee's sitting in his field in Salinas, we also have a Salvation Army Corps, which normally would translate into church, but Salvation Army uses military themes like, so I'm a major and not a pastor. At least those are not the words that we generally use. But so we have a corps or a church in Salinas on Main Street, east end of town there. And so they also help. And there's a young couple there. And currently they visit 7 encampments per week, doing 1,500 meals a week out there. It's phenomenal work that they're doing. And they've had very little assistance. We work with them, and we're trying to get some of the resources that we have here. We're trying to share where that's appropriate, where it's county-wise versus only for the peninsula. So we're working with them as well. So, and then of course there's Watsonville and there's Santa Cruz and there's other areas, Hollister and stuff like that. but that's kind of where the Salvation Army is in this area. Okay, and with that now, Judy, I did a lot of, I plowed the road for you now. You can begin to speak yourself.
Okay. Well, of course, it is Christmas season, and we have many families that have come to us looking for Christmas assistance. It's not just families that have children, but we have seniors that also apply. And anybody who has signed up, they'll be receiving food for Thanksgiving, turkeys and gift cards. And at Christmas time, those same families will be receiving, gifts if you have children, and food boxes. And so it'll be hams and, various things to eat. So that is, one of the big focuses right now. And of course, this year it is different with COVID because places that have assisted in the past with angel tags for children that we want to give gifts to, some of those businesses are not here anymore. Some of those businesses have everybody that works online as opposed to being in offices, and so it's a different picture this year. We are trying to address some of those things with online registries. Walmart is working with us, and there's a gift registry throughout the nation for the Salvation Army, and it's one way that people are able to give gifts. We do send out angel tags requests. We thank you folks because we know that you provide pajamas and toys, and it is just a huge effort that benefits many of the kids that we will be serving. So, we just say, thank you, thank you, thank you. God bless you. I looked at pictures of last year, what you folks did, and it was my heart was thrilled. I just have to say, it was such a generous outpouring of what you gave, and so we really appreciate that. So we've got families that are doing that. Another thing I'd just like to mention regarding the COVID situation. So we have children that are at home in our transitional housing units that have to go to school, distance learning in that manner. And so many people, you may have heard the stories. It's not always easy to have internet services that are allowing for good connections for children to tie in with classes. And so one of the things that we are kind of in the process of doing is upgrading our entire system so that really kids will consistently be able to tie in with their classrooms and do the work that is required, the research work, all of those things. I think, if at home, we take it for granted, even here in our office, we take it for granted that, our systems allow us to work efficiently. But the issue of children tying in for distance learning has really shown that that is not an easy thing to address. And so we are really working and concentrating on that so that all of our units, all of our families will have that capability. And so the kids learning hopefully will not be hindered any more than it already is when they are not able to, go and join in a classroom setting, physically. So we're, pleased about that. We don't have it completely solved yet, but we are at least, working toward that. So one of the things I'd just like to mention is for the Salvation Army, During seasonal assistance time, we really rely upon volunteers. I mean, you folks in giving gifts, we say thank you, but we have volunteers that bell ring. Lee, you had mentioned that. And, you know, a lot of times we will have sites that not are always manned because first, we don't always have people who are interested in being paid bell ringers. We do have those because we don't have enough volunteers to cover our sites. And so we always are thankful for, you know, anyone who would like to come and spend a couple of hours. You certainly can, you know, pick and choose your sites and your times. And we have a system where you sign up online and we'll have a little slide that is shown somewhere along the line that has that connection information. So we have a, you know, a website, we have a Facebook site. And for those that, you know, are interested in doing that, I'd also like to say we are happy to have volunteers work with us regarding emergency situations. And since we had the wildfires here, Salvation Army, we were out providing meals to those who had been affected by the wildfires, who were sheltered in areas, you know, we had a shelter at one of the schools and several motels. And so we provided meals here in Monterey and the surrounding areas. And so that type of thing, again, we are always happy to have volunteers who'd like to connect with us when those situations arise. And you never know when something is going to happen. So if you are interested, you know, you certainly can contact us and we will, you know, we have trainings that occur. And so that's just, you know, one additional thing. Let's see, is there anything else? I think that's, you know, just some general stuff. And if you have questions for us, things that we haven't covered, you know, please ask us. John, if there's anything else you want to put in there that I've missed.
Oh, that was great. And so, yes, we would like to hear if you have any questions, and some things we can answer and some things we'll have to get back to you on, but we'll do the best we can.
One of the things I want to comment, John and Judy, is that I've probably been a really good fan of Salvation Army for about 60 years.
Wow.
And in my years of a lot of community service, I spent a lot of time as a bell ringer. I spent a lot of time collecting things that were given out through Salvation Army. I've always felt Salvation Army is probably the best in our area. I don't know around the world, but there is one thing I want to add with my experience, and that is I've played and performed with Salvation Army bands.
Oh, okay.
And the Salvation Army music program, I don't know whether that still exists in the quality, but around the world, Salvation Army brass bands are number one. Generally, I remember a community band, Salvation Army band from Vallejo, I think, the last one that I brought to Watsonville for a concert that we shared with the Watsonville band. And we all got together on the stage and played together 2 or 3 numbers. Anyhow, music is one of your keys, and the music on the street corners is a wonderful addition in addition to the bell ringing.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
thank you.
Yes. In fact, I'll just mention that the Salvation Army does a music camp, a territorial music camp each year, and young people, children, are invited to attend that. And then divisionally, so for us here, we are in what's called Golden State Division. And each one of the corps, we are always looking for children that would like to go to a music camp just within our division. And of course, with COVID, unfortunately, those things did not happen this year. But we do encourage that music instruction. And I know here at our location before COVID, Lieutenant David Vargas, he operated a class teaching kids to play the guitar. So, we do have instruments, and we do feel like that is an important thing that we can offer to children. So anyway, God bless you, Ed, for being a part of that. And we look forward to when that can resume.
Yes.
Great.
I'm interested in, thank you. I had no idea. That's like a whole other aspect of Salvation Army. When you said about the Salinas office or the Salinas Corps, you said they were visiting 7 encampments and serving something like 1,700 meals a week. Is that
1,500 meals.
1,500?
Yeah.
Is that tied into the food bank, or what other?
Yeah,
like
it's
you
a
mentioned
combination
working with
thing.
other organizations.
Yeah, it's a combination. So they work with the food bank, and they do receive some funds from the city of Salinas, and so that may be county money. But yeah, they're working. That's how they kind of make it work. One of the things they said, just very interesting, is that people watched them as they were doing this, and they gathered a whole lot of volunteers just as people saw them doing that, and said, we'd like to help out. And so now they have quite a group of volunteers that help them with those feedings. It's just a young couple, I think maybe in their late 20s, early 30s, that are doing this. And they got 3 kids too that they have. So it's pretty amazing. Yeah.
And are these prepared meals, or the food to prepare?
This would be food boxes as much as possible. We do prepared
Got it.
meals for seniors there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
Interesting. My other question had to do with the internet, that you're increasing the
Yes.
capacity, and you said you're still working on that. Do you need help with that, or what's the?
Well, I think we've gotten all of the components in, and we just need approvals now. We're in the contract discussions right now. So along with the internet, there's all the infrastructure that has to happen within the buildings themselves, the wiring and all of those kind of things, and all the machines. And so it's been a difficult road for us. And the problem, of course, is that our internet wasn't really very robust to start off with. And then with all the families doing work at home, it became a crisis, and we weren't really aware of it. Of course, all sorts of things were happening, and we had just arrived. So now we're aware, we've been told. So we're in the process of making that work. And we had a group that funded our first year of this. So it's expensive. And so somebody has stepped up to fund that first year. So that'll take us till about this time next year. And so we'll see how we go from there.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Are there any other questions?
Yes, John, where are you physically located in the Monterey Peninsula?
So we're in Seaside, basically at Sonoma and Contra Costa. Yeah, just where the embassy suites are. We're just north of that.
And our Good Sam Center, where we do social service, that is in Sand City.
Right. Yeah, just next to the Costco. So as you're driving from Tioga and Costco's on the right, you'd go to the left and follow the street around there. That's where we're at.
You
Judy
provide
and John, what is it that is located on the north? What is it that's located in the north end at the end of North Main Street. What facility is that? They do things there, right? That's not just an office.
Yeah. No, that's so in Salinas. Yeah, they have the church. They have that's the basic hub there. That is their building. Yeah, for the Salvation Army's work there in Salinas. Yeah.
Mhm.
John, do you contract any services for the County of Monterey Health Department or Social Services Departments?
With social services, we do not specifically with health. Yeah, so a lot of our funding comes from it'll be United Way, County of Monterey, individual donations, foundations, and stuff like that, and then of course, obviously, individual contributions throughout the area.
Have you been able to do lunches like you were doing near the postgraduate school?
We continue to do that, but the numbers have gone down. So one of the things that's been happening is because of rental assistance, there are some folks who were homeless, not everybody by any means, but some folks who were homeless that that have been able to find some form of housing, at least temporarily. We're waiting to see how that's going to work, if that will continue. So the number's a little bit lower. In fact, somebody just said to me the other day, so in Monterey Peninsula, the numbers for us are lower, but in Salinas itself, they are much higher. So that's one of the things we're kind of learning as we move to this area. Because both Judy and I, we're not familiar with the Monterey area at all. We had a little bit of time in Rancho Palos Verdes, which is a kind of an entire world, and then Pacific Islands in Colorado. So this is new to us in all sorts of ways.
Welcome. Glad you're here.
Well, we're
Thank
glad
you.
to be here. Thank you so much, Ann. That's great.
How long do you anticipate being here in the Monterey Salinas area?
Sure. Well, normally an officer is stationed somewhere between 3 to 5 years. We were 17 years in Denver, or the Colorado area. That's very unusual. But 4 years in Marshall Islands, 3 years there. So I would say, it could be up to 5 years. We'll see how it goes.
So I can put you in my Rolodex in a pin. As opposed to a pencil.
Sure.
Yeah, you should. Yeah, Lee, you should do that. But we really would want. I mean, if you're bell ringing with the Salinas Corps, you should have their contact information. And I know that the slide that Judy prepared was basically Monterey Peninsula, but we can make sure that you get that information for the Salinas Corps.
I've got Ezekiel and Kate's number.
Okay, very good. Then you're already there.
Yeah.
Okay, I saw it says Debbie, but I think there was a gentleman that wanted to ask a question.
Yeah, I happen to live with Debbie. I'm Jim, but I'd be interested in contact information with the couple in Salinas. Linda asked questions, but we have people in the parish who are involved in 2 feeding programs. In the past, we've also been involved with Dorothy's Place. So we, I think, would like to learn more about what you're doing and ways we might coordinate.
Well, I'll tell you what. Your name again is?
Jim Copeland.
Jim, let me give you the phone number. Do you have something to write it down with?
I do, yes.
Okay, so let's make sure I can find it here. So it's 831-443-9655. And I think Lee can guide you there probably better than I can.
I can help out a little bit, Jim.
Yeah.
What's the couple's name?
Okay.
And,
What's the couple's name? Do you know offhand?
Ezekiel and Kate Hernandez.
Okay.
They're the feeding people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much.
So
there's-
I'm trying to share a screen because Judy provided, here. There. Can you all see that?
Yeah.
So that's some good information there. And we'll follow you with our Good Shepherd Facebook page.
Okay. That's great.
Yeah. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen now. Does everyone have the info? Okay. Yeah, we're excited. Our preschool and our church collect these toys and pajamas. And I don't know how you're distributing this year. You know, I would imagine in that shop it's going to be very well controlled.
We actually are going to do a drive-by distribution this year.
Yeah.
And so, you know, reducing our contact as much as possible and just, you know, that's the hope.
Right. Yeah. Are there any further questions? This has been really, really fascinating, especially, you know, finding out about how you guys coordinate with Salinas and all, you know, all the, and so good to hear that the rental assistance has really helped people,
Mm.
you know, move into housing.
That's it was really a big deal. And
Yeah.
so we hadn't been very much, we had done some of that, but not much. And so working with United Way, I could tell you, was a big learning curve for us because they had their own software. And so the first couple of weeks, I think all my staff said to me, "What did you do to us?" You know, but once they figured it out, they were fantastic and actually added some corrections for the software itself. And so that was helpful for United Way. Yeah.
So I'm going to ask a personal question. Just what drew you guys years and years ago into the Salvation Army, becoming a
Sure.
pastor
So,
majors?
yes, pastor majors. Yeah. Judy, did you want to start or do you want me to?
You go ahead.
Okay. All right. So we had come, we'd met actually, Judy and I met in Bible college. And so we were married and we're kind of starting our family and stuff like that. And we were working with independent churches in the North Seattle area. And time came to move on. And so a friend of ours was in Eastern Washington State. I don't know if any of you know the Eastern Washington, Yakima, Wenatchee areas. And she said, there's a town here that's 70% Hispanic. And I was looking to do some kind of outreach work. And so she invited us over there. And so we began with the Salvation Army in 1989. And so we spent 5 years there, and it was I was kind of looking at becoming a pastor in the normal sense, and I was sent to Missouri for the 1993 floods, and while I was there, I watched all these tractor trailers pull in every 30 minutes, and every 15 minutes get unloaded, everything sorted and stacked. And there were 3 Salvation Army officers, that's all. And there were probably 1,000 volunteers. And I watched what went on and I just said, this is amazing. I want to be part of this. So I came home and told Judy about that, as far as, maybe it's time to stop kind of looking at all these other things, and maybe we're really where we need to be. So that began the process for us. So that was probably 2.5, 3 years into our stay. And then we became officers the following year we went to training college in 1994. So that's kind of what brought us there. And then, a little bit of our history, again, 3 years in Colorado Springs, beginning a brand new kind of church, 11 years in Denver, working with a church in the section of Denver that's probably very wealthy, but we began a new outreach into a poorer section. Our kettles were so large at this place that we were able to fully support the work in Inglewood, which was just north of us. Yeah, a food pantry. We rented a building and stuff like that. That really kind of got the bug. And then a woman that was kind of heading up our program and I put together this program called Life Builders to kind of move people from instability to kind of to a stable life. That kind of began the work for us. Then we went to Colorado Springs again, but this is an entirely different role there, where there was an active shelter of 24/7 shelter, and that was a real lesson in humanity and how life works there. It was a very, very hard work, and trying to, you know, kind of strike that balance of kindness. So I have a new phrase that I tell my folks here at the Good Samaritan Center: industrial strength, kind hearts. Because it's really easy to have industrial strength and industrial toxicity, I can tell you, as you're working with people. And so then going to Marshall Islands, which was a completely different thing. We had no clue what that was like. And so Marshall Islands is a small group of atolls, which are kind of circular islands. It would be, if you've seen the normal islands, you know, usually there's the coast and then there's a mountain. Where the mountain is in the Marshall Islands, that's where the lagoon is. So you have little strips of sand that you're living on, sometimes no wider than a freeway. And in the one atoll that we lived in, the widest point was 1/4 mile across from the ocean to the lagoon. But most of it was much narrower than that. So when a big wave would hit, it would cover the island. In September 2014, we were awakened in the morning by the fact that there were people that needed places to stay. And of course, you know, the construction that we live in, there's no carpet any place. It's all, you know, tile or concrete floors. And so we housed 80 people for a few weeks because of that type of work. So that was, again, totally crazy. And then Hurricane Sudalor came, that hit, it hit the kind of the Northern Marianas, but specifically Saipan. And so a group of us, 5 Marshallese soldiers, which is the word for member, soldiers, flew out to Saipan. And, you know, again, Marshallese people, they love to travel and they don't care where they're going, because no place is as bad as where they live. So even in the middle of, I mean, I don't mean bad. I mean, it's just like, it's so basic. So here we are in Saipan and, you know, it's hot as blazes. There's no air conditioning. There's no running water. It was just like, oh, okay, that's the way it goes. I mean, it was amazing. And they absolutely loved their time there, which was such an insight to me. And so Hawaiian Pacific Islands, of course, lovely place to live, but a great need there. And the Salvation Army there runs some of the most important addiction treatment facilities throughout the islands there. So that was great so that kind of gives you a little bit more on where we've been. Yeah.
You signed up for a life of adventure.
Yes, and I'm probably the least adventurous person I know. However, our daughter, she picked up the bug, I think. So she lived 6 years in Honduras in the midst of all the craziness that's down there. So.
That's great. Yeah. I think our time has come to a close. If there are no other questions, I want to thank you very, very much for being here and joining us, and for your work.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
it was
Thank you.
delightful. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
We'll see you later.
Okay.
God bless you.
Thank you. Yes. How do I stop the recording?